Have you ever been in a Zoom meeting and found yourself distracted and unable to concentrate because of a thought that popped into your head? Or perhaps you have a deadline to hit, but you don't feel like your work is just quite right to turn in yet? Hi, I'm Tracy Ibrahim, Chief Compliance Officer and a therapist here at NOCD. And if you're like me, well, the modern workplace and all the pings and messages can feel very overwhelming at times. Now, add in if you have a mental health condition such as OCD, like I have, and the modern workplace can feel like a mountain of triggers and just feels so completely overwhelming. In this video, I'm going to share some of the ways the modern workplace can trigger my OCD and how I manage when those things pop up. One of the most common things for me that pops up, as well as something I see a lot with members I work with, is fear of doing something inappropriate. And we all know that working from home, or working remotely is something that is very common these days. And so a lot of us are doing work on the computer, on Zoom, or other platforms where we are on video with other people. Fear of doing something inappropriate can show up in so many different ways. I will share with you one way that this really came up for me, actually. When I first started my work years ago with NoCD, I was in a meeting with my boss and about 20 other therapists. And at the time, I was just there listening. I wasn't supposed to necessarily be talking or anything like that, but I kept getting the intrusive thought that I was going to unmute myself and say very inappropriate things to my boss, um, both about himself and about his wife as well. So that was an interesting one that popped up for me. It felt very real. It felt like that was going to happen. Luckily, I used my ERP tools to sit with that discomfort, which we'll talk more about later. But that was something that came up for me, and I often hear will come up for people that I work with. Sometimes it's fear of doing something inappropriate, like it could be you know fear that you're going to strip naked while on video, or fear that you're going to do something very embarrassing, fear that you're going to yell something out, fear that you are going to do something that just you can never take it back and everybody sees it or hears it, and it creates a situation for you in your workplace. Maybe you're going to get fired, or maybe you're going to say or do something illegal while on video, something along those lines. So that's a really common one that I hear and deal with all the time. It's actually something that is called thought action fusion, which a lot of people with OCD deal with, which is the fear that if I have a thought or an intrusive urge or feeling, that thing is actually going to happen. So the good news is we are not puppets, and OCD cannot actually control our body. But people with OCD do struggle with thought action fusion. So it felt very real to me at the time. It felt like I was going to yell this thing out, that I was definitely going to do it. And of course, I just sat with that, and it did not happen. Another big thing that comes up with members that I work with is fear of clicking on something inappropriate or clicking the wrong button. So maybe you're in a meeting and you're thinking, "Oh my gosh, I'm supposed to share a screen with a spreadsheet or with a certain page of information," and instead somehow you click on something very inappropriate, and now you're sharing, um, something else. Maybe it's, oh gosh, I meant to click on a spreadsheet, but now I'm fearing oh my gosh, what if I clicked on something illegal like child pornography? Or I meant to click one thing, but accidentally downloaded something else. And so that's another big one that comes up and leads to a lot of checking. Um, did I click something? Um, I need to go and check all of the different things that happened during that meeting. I need to see what all of the tabs are that I have open. Of course, checking is a compulsion of OCD, and so that I do see that quite a bit. Sometimes it's clicking a button such as sending an email. A lot of people will have this. What if I send an email and it says something that I didn't mean it to say? Fun fact, a fun little story. Um, that is one of the things that I have struggled with for a long time. And so when I send an email, before I was treated with ERP, I used to read and reread and reread and reread and try to make my email just right, make it feel like, okay, now this is the perfect way that I wanted to say this. Or if it wasn't perfect, I'd keep changing it. But also, I had a fear that if I didn't check it, somehow I would have written something inappropriate. And the funny story is that I decided for myself that I was going to stop checking altogether. I'm not even going to proofread at all. Um, and so I was doing this while sending an email once to our HR department. And fun fact, I meant to say something, I don't know what it was, but autocorrect changed it to the word butt, like butt, as in your butt. Um, and so that was kind of funny. And interestingly, I later, when HR replied to me, which funny thing is they didn't even notice because it wasn't really relevant or important. And I went to reread what I had sent and I saw that. And I was like, oh no, I sent something with the word but to HR. And so that was pretty funny. And so, I mean, sure, things could happen, especially with autocorrect, but I leave autocorrect on. I realize that if I'm going to send something and I accidentally send something that I didn't mean to send, I can always explain that. So I still don't go back and check. What I do now is I allow myself one read over. You can read it once and then you have to send it. So that's a fun one. And I see that quite a bit. I say fun, it's really not fun. It's actually quite distressing when you think that something like that has happened or is going to happen. But I just think that's a funny example that did actually happen to me. Also, another big fear that I see a lot is fear of being recorded or something being used against you. This happens a lot with a lot of members that I've worked with, thinking, gosh, I left my laptop open and I was, talking about my boss. And what if my company has a special, recording going on, secretly recording me at my house, things of that nature, or fear that somehow you put something onto your work computer or your personal computer that somehow got to your workplace, and is going to be used against you. That those are all common fears that I see. Also, it can be just fear that somehow this is happening with your cell phone. I see that come up with cell phones a lot as well. What if I didn't hit hang up and when I had that call with my supervisor and somehow it was still open, and then I went to talk to somebody else about something at my house or wherever I was, and what if they overheard that conversation? And now I'm trying to remember, did I say something that could be held against me? Did I say something wrong? Something along those lines. So I see a lot of compulsions with members around this, like uh, covering the camera on your computer, or, you know, checking to make sure over and over that certain tabs aren't open, or that nobody's recording or anything like that. Lots of uh, compulsions, like searching to online to see if that's something that your workplace can do. Can they record me? Um, a lot of different things like that. Um, Now, with all of those examples, and those are just a handful of ways that things can come up, as far as when you're working remotely, or when you're working with technology, even in your office, even if you're going into an office place and you're using computers, or you're using any form of technology. All kinds of fears can come up, all kinds of intrusive thoughts. It could even be something like, actually, I just thought of another one. So I often get the fear that I'm going to, on purpose, destroy the technology that my workplace has given to me to use. Like, I'm just, whatever. If I'm drinking a cup of coffee, that I'm just suddenly going to just pour that coffee, onto my laptop, or I'm going to punch the screen on my computer and just break it, no good reason. Just that it's an intrusive thought. Sometimes I have an intrusive image of that. And sometimes you also can get intrusive feelings. A lot of people don't realize that, but an intrusive feeling or an intrusive urge where you really feel that in your body. That actually happened to me earlier this week. I was sitting in front of my laptop doing some work, and I suddenly got the intrusive thought, you are going to just punch the screen. And I could feel it. I felt in my body like, oh my gosh, you're going to do it. You're going to punch the screen. And so I used some ERP techniques to deal with that, which we're going to talk about right now. Um, no matter what the fear is, I always work with members to help face their fears through ERP therapy. So, for instance, the way I dealt with, oh my gosh, you might punch through your computer screen, was I said, okay, you know what? That's possible. Maybe that's possible. And so I made a fist and I put it up to the screen, and I said, okay, go ahead. You're going to do it? You're going to make me do it? Is it going to happen? Could happen. It might happen. I might punch that screen. I don't know. Let's see if it's going to happen. And again, this fits in with that thought action fusion. Because I have the thought and the feeling and the urge, does that mean it's going to happen? And of course, it did not happen, luckily. I doubt that NOCD wants to send me endless numbers of computer equipment because I accidentally punch through them every time I get an intrusive thought or pour coffee on my stuff. So with ERP, what we do is we really start by identifying what are the fears that you have. How are your fears coming up? What kinds of intrusions are happening for you? And once we identify those, then what we do is we build what we call a hierarchy or a fear ladder, starting with very low level fears, and work our way up to the larger and larger fears. And that's very individual for everybody, right? So for me, the fear of, say, punching through my computer screen, it's pretty low. Um, if I were to make a hierarchy of fears for myself. Whereas something a little bit larger, like fear of pushing somebody down the stairs, for me is a little bit higher up there on my hierarchy or my fear ladder. Um, I have completely gone through ERP, and I have stayed well for over 20 years using ERP for myself, and helping other people for over 20 years face their own fears. So I can tell you that a lot of people are afraid and think, oh my gosh, how could you purposefully face your fears? Or sometimes they're even really disturbing types of fears. It could be about things that are more taboo, could be about, like I mentioned earlier, it could be about harming somebody, pushing them down the stairs. It could be about um, harm to yourself. It could be about doing things that are illegal. So, any number of things. And we do the same ERP treatment, no matter what the intrusive fears are that are coming to you. And so, as we start to build your fear ladder or your hierarchy, we then start to work with you from the very bottom first, the very small things. So, we would ask you to do things that don't feel super challenging and difficult. So, maybe let's just take, for instance, our first example where you have a fear of doing something inappropriate, maybe in a Zoom meeting or even in a real meeting. I shouldn't say real, but a meeting in person with somebody, the same thing could happen, right? Maybe I'm going to yell something out. Maybe I'm going to jump up and scream. Maybe I'm going to punch this person in the face. Maybe I'm going to strip naked and run through the building. These are all common things that can come up as far as when you're in the workplace and you're managing OCD, somebody like me. And so we would start maybe say, okay, what if we just sit with the image of accidentally or purposefully doing that feared thing? So maybe we're going to sit with the possible fear just by thinking about it. Oh gosh, I'm just thinking about myself yelling out something inappropriate. Okay, so that's called an imaginal exposure. Um, and other types of exposures that we would do as we're moving up sort of the fear ladder. Maybe we will do something like have you write out a script of a worst case scenario. Oh, I was at work on Thursday and I was in a meeting with my boss, and suddenly I yelled out, I hate you and you're ugly and I hope you die. Um, that would be very inappropriate. And so let's say we wrote this out and we say, and then I got fired and everybody hated me for the rest of my life or something. I could never find another job. So that would be an example of writing a script that addresses a worst case scenario of that fear. Another thing we might do is um, write write a certain word down. Like, let's say you have a fear of um, clicking something inappropriate. Maybe you think that you clicked on something illegal, or you clicked on, I don't know, a pornography site, and you meant to do something else like share a spreadsheet. So maybe we would write down sentences like, I will click on a pornography site, or I may or may not click on something inappropriate. And so maybe we're going to write some sentences down of various possibilities and read those sentences over and over. Those are some examples of different types of exposures we might do. I explained earlier one that I did of holding my fist up at my computer screen and saying, okay, go ahead. Maybe I will, maybe I won't punch through my computer screen. So that is another example of an exposure that we might do. Now, something to realize is that not only do we do ERP where we face our fears, but we also help you learn to manage through the discomfort and anxiety that comes along with facing your fears. Obviously, the reason why people with OCD feel so upset about these types of intrusions is because it feels real to us. It feels like it's really real and it's really going to happen. And so it feels very, very scary. And what we do is we work with something called inhibitory learning through the ERP process, which is helping to train your brain that those worst case scenarios that you fear are not actually going to happen. So you can sit with the uncertainty, feelings, and the anxiety that those intrusive thoughts or images or urges or feelings give to you. And just because it feels so urgent and desperate that you do something about it, that you don't need to do something about it. When we say something about it, that tends to be compulsions. That's typically what happens, is that we are doing compulsions. And the way out of OCD is learning not to compulse and instead to use our response prevention skills that we learn in therapy to get us through those tough moments while our brain learns that thoughts don't equal actions, or worst case scenarios don't always come true. So that's really sort of in a nutshell what ERP looks like. If what I shared in the video resonated with you, I want you to know there's hope. With specialized treatment from a trained therapist, you can learn to manage your symptoms and put yourself, not OCD, in charge of your life. If you're ready to start therapy for OCD, or if you have any questions about treatment, please go to NOCD.com today to schedule a free 15-minute call with our team. You can talk to us about your symptoms, and we'll match you with a licensed therapist in the NOCD network who has specialized training in ERP to treat OCD. You don't have to share your symptoms during that call. It's totally optional. You can just call and ask questions. It's really just a time for you to get questions answered and find out more about our therapy and how we can help you.